Today, we're diving into a really powerful concept from the work of Kavita Jadhav. We're going to explore what happens on a karmic level when a source of sacred feminine energy gets exploited. It's a story about generational consequences and the massive ripple effects that can follow.
Okay, so let's just start with this central idea from the source material, because it really sets the stage. A karmic earthquake. Wow. This suggests that a woman's spiritual alignment isn't just some personal, quiet thing. It's a force of nature. It's powerful enough to shake the very foundations of systems that are built on ego. So, what does that actually mean? Let's unpack it.
To get our heads around this karmic earthquake idea, we first have to understand the energy source behind it, and that is the feminine principle, or Shakti. Now, the source material here presents Shakti not just as some gentle, nurturing force, but as something incredibly dynamic and potent, a real driver of evolution. At the very core of this whole framework is the idea of the feminine vessel. So think of this as a woman who acts as a channel, a conduit for divine energy, for Shakti. And this energy, it's not just for her. It's meant to flow through her, to elevate everything and everyone she touches, her family, her community, her entire lineage. And, this isn't some new age idea. It has really deep roots in Vedic scriptures, like the Bhagavad Gita. This verse here highlights a super important point. Divine understanding isn't something you just learn from a book. It's something that is given to the devoted. So it creates this direct link between your inner state and your connection to a higher source. So this leads to what the source calls a four-step karmic chain reaction, and this is the central argument. First, you have a woman who channels this divine energy. Second, a system, could be a family, could be a company, exploits that energy for its own benefit. Third, once her purpose is served, she, the vessel, is discarded. And then, the fourth and most crucial step, the system literally severs its own connection to that divine source. Right, so that's the chain reaction. Now let's look at how this builds into what the source describes as a pattern of betrayal. And this isn't always some big dramatic event. It's often really subtle, and it gets masked by tradition, by culture, and by social expectations. And this is where you see this huge, tragic disconnect. The system sees the vessel as a tool, right? A symbol to project honor onto, a utility to be used for its own ends. But in the process, it completely ignores her true sacred qualities, her incredible calm, her divine intelligence, her integrity. The system values her function, but it is totally blind to her essence. And get this betrayal almost never happens out in the open. Instead, it gets justified with these really deeply ingrained cultural prejudices. These excuses basically frame her strengths, her independence, her beauty, not as assets, but as threats or flaws. And that makes the exploitation seem somehow warranted. Now, here's a really crucial point the source makes. This pattern isn't just perpetrated by men. It's often enabled or even orchestrated by other women within the system. Specifically, the source points to those who haven't had the experience of raising a daughter themselves and therefore have never had to nurture that same kind of feminine sensitivity. Okay, so what are the consequences? What happens when a system betrays the vessel and cuts itself off from the source? Well, the effects aren't always immediate or obvious. The source argues they are karmic and they unfold over generations. It's a slow burn. And this chart really shows one of the biggest consequences. A family might be incredibly successful at building and passing down material wealth, but look at what happens to their spiritual clarity. It just plummets. The wealth, in a sense, becomes cursed. It provides all the material comfort you could want, but it actually blocks the path to true wisdom and grace. Yeah, the karmic fallout is just massive. The lineage becomes spiritually hollow. Future generations might carry this kind of emotional barrenness. The source even suggests that daughters may stop being born into the family, not as a punishment, but as a kind of divine withdrawal of that sacred feminine energy. So the family might look successful from the outside, but really, it's in a state of spiritual decay. But then, something can shift. A spiritually awakened woman enters this dysfunctional system, and her purpose, according to the source, isn't to fix the family. It's to act as a mirror, simply reflecting its hidden truths back at it. So this begs a really fascinating question, right? The system has her pegged for a certain role. Maybe she's the scapegoat, the helper, the problem. But what happens when she awakens and just stops playing that part anymore? And here's the thing. She doesn't have to pick a fight or preach to anybody. Her power is in her very being. Her spiritual alignment creates a kind of frequency. And in her presence, everything the system has pushed down, all the guilt, the dysfunction, the unresolved issues, it just can't stay hidden anymore. It all starts rising to the surface.
And you can imagine this creates a massive disconnect in perception. On the one hand, the group sees her as rebellious, maybe arrogant, a threat to their stability. But the karmic reality is that she's a divine mirror. She's operating at a higher frequency. She's a witness to the truth. They aren't actually reacting to her. They're reacting to the uncomfortable truth she forces them to see in themselves.
So in the end, her just being there forces the entire system to a crossroads. It becomes a moment of truth, a real karmic reckoning where the lineage has to decide its own future. And this is what that choice is all about. The vessel is more than a person. The source describes her as a living altar. This means that how she's treated is a direct reflection of the system's relationship with the divine. So, to use her gifts but deny her dignity is, in this framework, to literally insult the very source of that divine energy. You know, this one quote just sums up the whole tragic misunderstanding at the heart of this entire dynamic. The system saw a utility, someone to help them get what they want, but her true purpose was to show them who they really were. And that leaves us with a final thought, a question that really brings this home for all of us. Think about the systems in your own life, your family, your workplace, your community, and just ask yourself, where is energy being truly honored and where is it just being used?